I just wanted to start off by thanking the Creator for her beautiful creation. She gave us a beautiful, beautiful way of life and all the creatures that live on it as well. Throughout my life, I have been very passionate about ensuring the truth is told. We need to tell the truth. Before there's any reconciliation, we need to learn the truth. Indigenous veterans have always answered the call to arms to defend a country that has not always protected them, or recognized them, or helped them. The Indigenous veterans were often in the front lines, facing the brutalities of war firsthand. This was no different during the war in the Pacific. Many Indigenous veterans fought in Hong Kong with missing equipment and became prisoners of war. Following the war, Indigenous veterans were not provided the resources or the education they were promised during their service. We had to deal with that, and we continue to deal with those things.
This is Harry Drury, a Métis boy from Hodgson, Manitoba, barely 17, borrowing someone else's bike because he didn't come from much. A middle child, loud and rambunctious, but ultimately a family man. He had to go to war to save his family's farm, so that's what he did. He enlisted in the Winnipeg Grenadiers, and he had no idea what was waiting for him over the pond in Hong Kong. When we think about World War II, we don't always think about Hong Kong. But in December 1941, it became one of the war's earliest and most brutal battles. Just hours after Pearl Harbor was attacked, Japan crossed the border into Hong Kong. Hong Kong was defended by British soldiers, Indian soldiers, local Hong Kong, and nearly 2,000 Canadian soldiers, mostly from Winnipeg and Quebec City. For most of them, it was their first time ever leaving home. The fighting lasted 17 days. It started on the mainland, but they were outnumbered, outgunned, and cut off from reinforcements. By mid-December, they were pushed back onto Hong Kong Island. There they fought street by street, hill by hill, mostly at night, tired and hungry. Civilians were caught in the crossfire, and hospitals were overwhelmed. And on Christmas Day, surrounded and exhausted by the enemy, the Allied forces were forced to surrender. This day became known as Black Christmas. But for the men who survived, the war wasn't over. It was just beginning. They were taken as prisoners of war and sent to camps in Hong Kong and later Japan. Harry Drury was one of them. Conditions were brutal. They were given almost no food, a bowl of rice, or a cup of watery soup per day, and they were forced to do back-breaking work. Coal mines, building airfields, working in shipyards. Of the Canadians captured, 300 never made it home. But through it all, they found ways to survive, sharing what little food they had, caring for the sick, and keeping each other's spirits up. They say that brotherhood and stubborn hope is what kept them alive. But from those that did make it home, and some that didn't, their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren carry their stories today. Gary, I'm Riel.
Yeah, hi. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for doing that. I'm sure people are going to enjoy the podcast. Podcasts are pretty popular.
They're definitely. I think people just want to have the opportunity to listen to the full story. You know what I mean? Are a good part of the full story.
And that's all we have now. We have no veterans, so we're the story keepers, so we're the ones that are telling our father's stories, and so it's
So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Quebec City,
Okay.
in la ville de Québec.
Mm.
So je parle français aussi pour ceux qui parlent français, because my mother is French, and so you're automatically bilingual when you have a French parent, English mother, English father.
Yeah.
But that's where I grew up, went to school there, and But I left in 72, right after graduation, and
It made your way out west, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it was the thing to do.
That was the thing to do back in the day.
Well, the Quebec was in a turmoil then, like the October crisis, and had created a pretty tumultuous environment, so naturally people, wanted to, or young people like myself, and if you were primarily English speaking, it was, the thing to do, come to Ontario or carry on,
Yeah.
And I just, kept on going, yeah.
What was growing up with your dad like? Your dad was a Hong Kong veteran.
Yeah. So, when you're young, you just don't have that appreciation, I knew I used to see him get all dressed up, with his medals and things, his suit, and he was always pretty dapper. He loved to get his nice clothes on for those occasions, and I remember him going to all of the conventions because the Quebec City, Quebec Maritime, you see there, the association at that time was the Quebec Maritime Association, Prairie Association, and Ontario, and so they had conventions provincially, and then every 2 years they would have a national convention.
Yeah.
So my dad would go, it seemed like he was always going to these conventions, and so that was kind of, I'd see him go off and go to these, but then I didn't appreciate, all of the veterans, everybody they were meeting, and why. I didn't understand that part, but I do know now, I know that I've got a better knowledge of all that, and, a better appreciation for how important those conventions were. Because I was never at a convention with him, but I went with my mother later after my dad passed. She wanted to see her friends that she had made, at these, conventions, and make those connections. And yeah. So
did your dad ever talk about the war with you growing up? No.
He was in a way he spared us that, because if you, it's my belief, if you talk too much about that kind of stuff, you're also instilling prejudices and feelings in. So he never talked about that, but it was mainly because like I mentioned this to somebody yesterday, on his deathbed, I asked him why he never spoke, and he said because they didn't believe this, the stories. I said, what do you mean? He said they didn't believe what we had to do to survive, and well, now I know, what this story is all about, and so the interesting part is I knew nothing, earlier, but now I know quite a bit about the story, much more, and so.
For those that don't know, what did they have to go through to survive while they were prisoners of war over there?
Well, like this, every day was survival, right? Because you're already in a weakened state after, months and months. People, you could see their health going down, and they had disease set in, and they were losing. In 1942, they lost. They would lose a man a day. And that's a lot, 30 men a month. And until they were able to change the rhythm of what they were doing there, but. Just survival every day, and it's very psychological too, what they had to endure, under threat all the time, but just, and people who don't know, well, Hong Kong, not so much, but Japan, it's very much like British Columbia. The weather, it can get very cold, and they would get snow at times, and, when you're in that kind of a state, of very low nutritional, it's hard to stay warm and stay healthy, and so just everyday kind of stuff, and there are other things, they did, like eating whatever came up against the fence and got electrocuted, that kind of stuff, but he never spoke about that kind of stuff. I learned and I read in many stories, like of those guys and what they had to do. And everyone has a different take, but there's a common denominator, and the common denominator, was, they had a will, to survive, and they just kept on going,
Yeah.
They took every day, and for what it was, and but those who fell under disease and that just couldn't, and they fell by the wayside, and this 264 of them, died in the camps after, so that's a lot,
Yeah.
It's brutal.
Yeah, I always think about, like, what do you have to be telling yourself to go through all that and then survive every single day? Every day is the test,
Yeah. I learned this from my sister, I don't see my sister too often. She lives in Peoria, Illinois, and she came up for this, and she said that Dad had a prayer book. You saw one of them in there. It's on the in the memorabilia room, a little prayer book, and apparently my dad gave that to her when she was young, and he said this kept me going.
Really? Wow. A prayer book.
My dad never struck me as a religious person, and he wasn't, religious, at least, but I think that, when he was 18, so 18, 19, 20, and, you go, after 2 years, after 3 years, you go, well, is this it? Is this what I'm going to, and so, but apparently the prayer book kept him going. I mean, that's what she said, but, and, that's, so you learn things,
Mm-hmm.
you learn from talking to others, what they did. And, this connections, this is what I was talking about here with somebody different, yesterday, I think you were here, taking some connections, a connection in Vancouver, because they're having something on the 16th, on the Sunday, the 16th of the VJ Day celebration on Sunset Beach in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And one of the guys that, one of the Royal Rifles guys, I was looking through the membership list and I found this name and I phoned him up and he said, yeah, sure, I'll go down, and I'll talk. And he says, by the way, who was your dad? And I said, well, Bill Tupper. And he said he was in Sendai. And he said, oh, really? He said, my dad was in Sendai. And so, really? I said, who's your dad? And then I looked up, I saw the picture, because all the pictures are in the gallery online.
Yeah.
hkvca.ca, just a shameless plug.
Yeah, look in there and say that.
Yeah, we all know that one. And so you go in the gallery section and you looked up Sendai in there, and Sendai 2, and there were 47 guys there, half Winnipeg Grenadiers and half Royal Rifles. And his dad was a Royal Rifle. And he said, really? I said, where's your dad? And the picture. I said, sitting right there beside your dad.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk to him when I get back to BC, and we'll have a, conversation about that, and,
Yeah.
maybe get our pictures side by side, holding the picture, just so, but that's the kind of connection, and then I spoke to somebody else here, a guy by the name of Lads, and same thing. His dad was in Sendai too. I said, really? So then I took out my list, I have a list of the prisoners, in his camp, and sure enough, his dad was in that one too, so. It's just interesting, I know that our fathers would be chuffed, is the expression. They'd be chuffed, they'd be pleased that we're making connections.
They were hanging out.
Yeah. It's just a fun thing, it's, my dad was not one to, dwell on the horrors, in that, but just on he was able to, I explain it this way, not everybody was able to do this, but my dad was able to compartmentalize his experience, in life, and so his first experience was school and that, but then, after, 16, then you join the cadets, and then by 18, you're into the thick of it and you're volunteering and off you go, you know. So the war was a compartment of his life, you know, like, and then after that, coming back was, you know, having his family, getting married, having his family, the children, you know, like, so that was the other compartment, you know, like, and then retirement after work, you know, like, and so my dad, somebody asked me today at breakfast, you know, what did your dad do? You know, like, you know, because I'm always interested in what their dads did, you know, like after.
Like for jobs.
Yeah, with jobs. And my dad, well, he had a choice between a postal worker or a Canada Customs, you know, a customs guy, you know, like, and he was in Quebec City, and they said to him, well, what do you want, Mr. Trevor? And he said, well, I think I'd like, you know, the postal worker. And guy was a French guy, and he said, oh, Monsieur Tupper, see, still, you know, like is in the winter, you know, the snowbanks and the big bag and so my dad thought for a second. He said, I'll choose the customs. And so he really enjoyed the customs because they had a uniform too, you know, like, and so he, you know, with the hat and the whole bit, you know, like, and the badge, you know, like, and so I think he enjoyed that part of it. But I you know, I've spoken to other, you know, some veterans. They said, well, what did you do? You know, one guy was a prison guard.
Wow.
I went, oh, really? Well, what was that like, eh?
Yeah.
You know, like, can you imagine? So it's interesting to see how they, you know, they live their lives, you know, like, and, you know, but my dad, thankfully, you know, like you know, I believe he had a happy life, you know, like, and so, you know, he was grateful.
Yeah.
He was grateful.
What do you want, like, people in the next generation to know about the Hong Kong conflict and war?
How easily, I think how easily we could get embroiled in something like that, you know, like we already have. Afghanistan was, you know, that was a shit show for, you know, 300 Canadians, you know, we lost quite a few men there, you know, like, and it just seemed like, oh, go, you know, go do your stint. Well, it was, you know, it was dangerous work, hard work for these guys, you know, and they come back and a lot of them have problems, you know, like PTSD and stuff like that, you know, so think long and hard about it, you know, like, and, you know, and I think preventing, you know, stuff, you know, like diplomacy, you know, like preventing stuff, you know, like is, you know, that's my take on it, you know. You know, because, wow, it really can affect you the rest of your life, you know, like, man, all the after effects, you know, all these guys, you know, and that was one of the other common denominators, you know, they all had, no one comes back from war unaffected, you know, like, and every single one of them was affected, you know, like either physically, psychologically, you know, like, and they spoke about that. Did you go to the ceremony today?
Yeah, we filmed it.
Yeah, that's right. They were there, yeah. So the guys spoke about that and some of the after effects that they had, you know, like, and my dad, you know, through the nutrition, he never drove a vehicle, you know, because he looked, you know, his eyesight was so compromised, you know, like, and imagine that, eh?
Really?
That sucks the life out of a room, you know, when you talk to the young people, they go, what did he say? You know, like, and yeah, he never drove a vehicle, never had a driver's license, you know, like,
wow.
So, yeah, you know, because he couldn't, you know, like, but it was just one of those things and he got on with it, you know, like, and, but that's one of the things, and people had coal bronchitis, you know, from working in the coal mines. My dad was, you know, worked in the coal mines.
Yeah.
Had that after effect, you know, the coal lung, they call it.
Yeah, black lung, yeah.
Black lung, yeah. So, and, yeah, you know, some of them, the people I talked to, oh, about your dad? And he said, oh, yeah, he had a bad cough, he had this, he had that, you know, like, and so there's this, you know, that, you know, like that, and well, thankfully my dad didn't have that huge psychological, at least I wasn't aware of it, you know, like, and, you know, like, and so, you know, so, yeah.
Anything else you'd like to say?
No, I don't think so. Other than I hope people, you know, have a really good reunion, and you know, there's good memories and good connections, and people, you know, see that you know, there's ways of commemorating our our veterans, and talking about them, is a really good way, to do that, and calling out their names.
Hand grenades were being thrown by the Japanese all around us, and Sergeant Major John Osborne was flinging them back as fast as he could. One of the grenades landed near John Osborne. In the ultimate sacrifice, CSM Osborne threw himself onto the grenade. He was killed instantly, but managed to save his men. It was the bravest thing we had ever seen.
These little kids are more into learning about the history of my dad, the great-grandpa to them, than my own boys are.
Oh, yeah.
But I think maybe after I'm gone, they'll be a little more interested.
So what, so your dad was in the war?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was it like growing up with him?
Well, when he come home, he married my mom, and then they had 6 children. I was the third of 6 children. And then he got killed on the family farm.
He got killed on the family farm?
Tractor rollover.
Oh, no.
Us 3 older kids were with him that morning, and the 2 older ones had to help pick stones, and I got to ride on the tractor because he always called me his runt because I had a heart condition, so I was just daddy's girl. And I was 5 when he died.
Oh.
And so I just, I can remember that day like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And remember the paddy wagon coming out and taking him into town and all that stuff. And then remembering that my mom wouldn't let me go to the funeral, so I never really got to say goodbye to him.
You weren't allowed to go to the funeral?
What's that?
Weren't allowed to go to the funeral?
No. Well, she had 6 kids. She couldn't take us all.
Yeah.
I think the 2 older ones went. But so it just became a passion of mine. I wanted to know what kind of a man he was. So I used to interview some of the vets around Swan River because all of them knew him. And I'd go to every reunion, sit there and try to get the vets to talk about it, but they didn't. But if I sat a table over and they'd had a few drinks amongst themselves, they would talk about stuff.
What did you learn?
Not too much from them.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot from the books once they were written.
Yeah.
But I got very frustrated because you'd go to look for books on Hong Kong in a store and you couldn't find them.
Yeah.
And it was a few years after that some of the veterans were starting to write their books.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Atkinson was always funny. He says, some of them are BS. And some of them are closer to the truth, Because some they felt were embellished a little bit kind of a thing. But, and Mr. Harris, he was in Old Mean Mine, I'm not sure how they pronounce it.
Okay.
In a coal mine. And he said my dad wasn't there, but he knew my dad as a person, So,
yeah.
And then when he died, he left me all, and his kids didn't want any of his stuff from Hong Kong, so he left it to me in his will.
Really?
I got books, and there's one there that's laminated. A young man sketched all those sketches while they were in prison camp.
Yeah.
And made it into a booklet, and so he gave me a copy of that as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
So your dad was a grenadier then?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my uncle and great uncle, they were both Royal Rifles, and then when they come home from Jamaica and they found out Daddy was going to Vancouver, they switched from Royal Rifles to the Grenadiers. That's how they end up going to Hong Kong with him.
Oh, so all 3 of the boys went?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's wild.
Like 23 years old. Uncle Bill was 23, and Uncle Ed was maybe 24, 25, and then my dad, I think, was 27.
What was your dad's story? Where did he grow up?
He was born in Peterborough, Ontario.
Okay.
And when Uncle Bill, the youngest one, he was 2, and their mother had died, and so the family moved to Swan River area. And up there, he farmed and built houses. He built a lot of houses up in that area, and then later he owned his own sawmills and stuff. And
okay.
That's what he did just before he died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you hear any stories about him when he came home or anything like that? Nothing.
No. even like just recently, I found an article on, it was in a newspaper called the Daily Colonist, and it was when they were liberated and come home.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in Victoria, BC, October 4th or 5th of 1945. My dad has 6 pictures. That was all that was left on our farm, eh? And I asked all the veterans around Winnipeg and stuff where these pictures were from, and none of them knew. They said, all we know is he's in an American uniform, so it must have been when he come home.
Mm-hmm.
And when I found this newspaper on the archives, every one of those pictures were in that newspaper article.
Really?
I have
We'll
have that
we'll
in
put
there.
them in there, right? We'll
Yeah.
put them in there right here when we're talking about
It's really cool. Like I bawled when that was last November. I found that,
you found
and I was a speaker for our Remembrance Day service.
Mm.
So I'm up there crying my eyes up and showing them. I finally found out how my dad got home.
Yeah.
But they interviewed all the men on the ship, eh? They sent reporters to the ship as they were coming into port. And my dad and Mr. Stevens from Winnipeg were the only 2 grenadiers. And when they asked them to have an interview, they said, no, we're just happy to be home. We don't want to talk. But the guys from the Royal Rifles all talked, and they had a lot of stories about what they would do if they saw a Japanese person.
Oh.
They had no like for them. But so that's how we found out that those 10 guys were in the same camp all throughout. Well, not the same camp. They moved from camp to camp, but
Yeah.
they were all together for almost that 4 years.
Wow. That's
So it was
amazing.
pretty, yeah. So we kind of knew, and they were all guys that worked with their hands and wood, eh? So
Yeah.
that's why they were in the shipbuilding part.
What would you ask your dad today if you could ask him a question?
Just how he kept the faith that he was going to get home, I guess.
Yeah.
Because while he was in prison camp, he found out about both brothers being killed. So it had to be hard, knowing that the only other family he had left was one sister, and both of his brothers were gone in the same, one in Normandy and one in Hong Kong.
Yeah. What you were just telling before we started rolling the cameras, you were just telling the story about how one of your uncles was killed.
Yeah, Uncle Bill. Well, we called him Uncle Bill, but his name was William.
Yeah.
We didn't call him up. Mom and them called him Bill.
What was that story?
Because I never got to know him. What was that again?
How did he pass?
That mortar blast.
A mortar blast.
Yeah.
When during the invasion.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And one of the Mr. Broom in Swan River was interviewed, and he was the one that told the story, because he said he ran down the hill to tell my dad.
Yeah.
Because my dad was just down the hill from where this had taken place. And I guess there was a blast before that, so there was a big hole, right? So Bill was just jumping in that for cover, and the mortar hit him.
And another one came through. Wow.
So there's no remains to find.
What do you hope the next generation remembers or should know about Hong Kong?
Well, for my boys, I tell them, I just want them to know what these men went through, and they're all young men, way younger than what my boys are now.
Yeah.
And they volunteered to go, and they were just farm boys, and I guess they had some training because they did go to Jamaica for garrison duty and that kind of stuff. But they were just young men trying to do something for the country, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And if you forget about it, then it's like they didn't exist. So that's why I keep it alive. Like,
Yeah.
I go and talk to school kids. I'll talk to anybody that wants to listen,
Yeah.
because I think for the longest time it was just kind of a hidden war. Nobody talked about it.
Yeah.
The Korean War is kind of like that, too,
Yeah.
because there's not as much information about it. And if we don't get the information out there, then it'll just be gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's my feeling on it anyway.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's why we want to make sure we record as much as we possibly can.
And it was a passion for my mom to, that's how we kind of got started. I started driving her to the reunions and stuff.
Oh.
And this is probably the first event that she hasn't been with me because she passed away in 2021.
Yeah.
But she went to the schools. We put 2 of these plaques up. We did one in Russell. It's up by our Legion room in Russell, and we did one in Swan River. We had a whole ceremony and everything. And
Wow.
another thing Mom did was she had all the vets up there that were disabled or could not make it into Winnipeg to get their medals. She had the guy come out from Winnipeg and some of the government officials and stuff, and we did it all in Swan River.
Wow.
She'd make me MC it, and she'd help hand out the medals.
Damn.
But yeah, it's just to keep it alive. And
What, like, how do I ask this question? Like, did your mom tell you any stories or anything like that about?
not a lot, because she said he didn't talk about it a lot. But she said he did have blackouts when he come home, and he had a bit of a temper when he come home. But he never, not towards Mom or us kids, but just some things would get to him, and then he'd go out. One time he went out and he just fired a shot in the air, and he ended up killing one of his horses. So from then on, he never did that again.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh.
But my Uncle Ed, now that was a different story. Like he almost killed his family one time thinking they were Japs, and he was going to kill them. He was a bad drinker. And so the flashbacks and the dreams and stuff.
Yeah.
It just, they used to come out to our farm and hide and when his dad had been drinking.
Dang.
But anyway, that some of them just really had a hard time when they come home.
Yeah. My grandfather had a hard time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like even in that interview, he didn't want to talk about any of it. He was just happy to be home. So I assume it'd be the same at home there.
Yeah.
Because Mom was very young when they got married. She was only 15, and he was in his early 30s, I think.
Oh, wow.
And when he died, she was 25 years old, and she had 6 kids under 8. The baby was 6 months old, and there's a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, and then one that was going to turn 8.
Oh my gosh, that's wow. Is there anything else you'd like to share, Judy? Any other stories or anything like that?
No, my mom was a strong woman. There was no will, so he hadn't paid anything on the farm, and it was Crown land. And she paid it off in 15 years. They gave her 16. She wouldn't take welfare because she would have had to sign the farm over, and she wasn't going to do that.
Yeah.
She had $1.56 in her pocket and us 6 kids. And
Wow.
she worked as a waitress and paid that farm off. She lived to be 90.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Good for her.
So, and like with me, she'd have to take me to Winnipeg every 3 months because of my heart,
Yeah.
and so forth. She didn't have money. She just worked on faith.
Christmas Day, 4 p.m. we surrendered. We gave up to these imitations of men. What a disgrace. The next morning we stacked our rifles, the last act before total surrender, and the equivalent of presenting the sword to the victor. That was the last I saw of my Enfield. I had carried it from Valcartier in July 1940.
Who was Sergeant Gander?
He was originally named Pal, and he, after siring 10 pups in 1938, he became the family pet of the family of Rod Hayden, of little Jackie Hayden, and he was about 90 kilograms in weight, and he was about 30 inches to the shoulder, standing up. He scratched Joan Chafe's face when playing with the kids.
Okay.
And when he scratched her face, the mother of Jack Hayden was upset that she might, one of the other kids might get hurt from Pal jumping up on that. So she gave him to the Royal Rifles of Canada, who were stationed at the Gander airport.
Okay.
And when they received her, they decided to change his name, Ligon Marguerite. when he got his name changed to Gander in honor of the village he was from. And so the men of the unit basically made him the mascot, and they were all excited about it. And I always say that the reason that they loved him so much was because he brought some of home to them in the service. When they on December 8th began the bombing and shelling of Hong Kong by the Japanese. The Canadians were told they were expecting about 5,000 Japanese to come on, to attack them. And it turned out to be 60,000. So the odds were massive. But Gander was just working with the men and playing with them and was just a mascot. They didn't train him to do anything militarily. So he was just a pet. And they all loved him. Well, then when the Japanese on the 18th, the night of the 18th of December of 1941, when they went to attack, Gander was coming at them as they were coming on the beach. And he would go at them, he'd knock them down, he would bite at them, and he was fighting them, and he was scaring them. And the Japanese actually thought he was a surprise or a secret weapon. They called him a black devil.
Really?
And they didn't know what it was. People have asked, why didn't they just shoot him? Okay. Well, you got a couple reasons why. Number one, when he jumped up on them, they would lose their weapon and it would float away or go to the ground, go to the sink in the water, and they would not have the weapon with them. And at the same time, at 10 o'clock at night, with no moon, because it was all cloud covered, there was no way they could see where he was. He was a black dog on a black beach in the middle of nothing, and you can't see nothing. Imagine yourself in a closet and a dog, a black dog, jumping up on you with the door closed, and you don't see anything.
Yeah.
What are you going to shoot at?
Yeah.
You don't see anything. So in turn, what they did is they ran away, got back on their ships or their boats, and floated away and went to a different part of the beach and came on shore. After a few hours of fighting, the soldiers that were wounded were taken to the medic tent, and there were 7 that were left on the side of the road, on one side of the road. And on the other side of the road, the Japanese were in a gully down below, and they heard the soldiers that were hurting, they heard them, and they started throwing grenades in their direction. And every time a grenade landed near them, and you got to understand, a Japanese grenade is not like a U.S. grenade. It's got a fuse on it, so you can see the burning, so you could see where it was. And they threw it, and the soldiers that were wounded would grab a hold of the grenades and throw them back to the other side. Well, eventually one landed outside of their reach, and Gander had noticed what was going on, so he grabbed one and he took it back to the Japanese. Unfortunately, it went off.
Oh, wow.
And he lost his life doing that action. The next day, they noticed they could see the carcass in the middle of the road, and they couldn't get recovery of it because the Japanese were everywhere. So they just had to leave him, and that was the end of that.
Wow.
He
What a hero, though.
Yes. And these men love this dog. Kelly said when he was in the POW camp, after Christmas when they were captured or surrendered, British had them surrender. Kelly said he would be sitting there on his bunk, and they would, he just have aftermath thoughts about Gander and how much he missed him, and just so sad that he lost his life doing what he did, but he did it because he loved those men.
We were in St. Stephen's Hospital as the Japanese advanced. Japanese soldiers beat on the door with their rifle butts, demanding to get in. Colonel Black went to the door and began to protest. The Japanese shot him dead. It was December 25th, around 7:30 in the morning.
How did you find out about the event in the first place?
My wife and I became members in, I believe it was 2014. I saved my whole life to take a trip to Hong Kong to visit the memorial where my uncle's name is engraved. I can tell more about that story. That was 2014, and when we were looking for a guide to show us around and give us the detailed history, we stumbled across the HKVCA, and then we ran into Lori Aitchison, and we become best friends with her, and we joined up, and we've been here ever since. So
cool. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Hamilton, Ontario.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the family environment like when you were growing up?
It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the only, my parents had two daughters and me. I lost my both sisters before I was born. So I grew up as an only child, and my father was a World War II vet. He served in Sicily and Italy, France, Germany, and stayed for the liberation of Holland. He stayed later. They asked for volunteers to stay behind to he was an artilleryman on a 25-pound howitzer cannon. So he had a gun tractor, a caisson that pulled your ammunition, and then the cannon itself. So it was like a little train. And after the war, they got rid of the caisson and the cannon, and he would drive to the ports, and the farmers would line up all their wagons of food that they'd get off the ship. And then he would drive it through Holland to all these little villages that were starving, and he was delivering food. So he stayed a little bit longer than the other guys that just came home right away. So he was part of that. And then when he came home, he ended up leaving Manitoba to come here for work. And he stayed here and met my mother. And
we'll get to your uncle with Hong Kong in a second, but I'm just curious, what was your dad like growing up towards you, being on the European front?
Yeah, he was my best friend growing up. When I played sports, it was always my dad that took me to the sports. He was always there, hockey and football, and you'd always see him. But he was just quiet. My father was very quiet, never said very much at all, unless he had to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that was his war experience. As I mentioned earlier, he never spoke of his war experience. And as I said, when I was in my 30s, he was in a boat with my wife and I. We were out fishing. And I said, Dad, my whole life, I have no idea what you did in the Army. Like, I know you're an artilleryman. I know you're a gunner. But I said, I don't know where you fought. I don't know what you did, what you experienced. So he said when they were in Italy, I think it was near Mount Cassino, they lined up their 25-pound howitzers to shell the German lines. And you would always put your gun in place, take your case on with ammunition far away. And then I think there's 7 men on a gun crew, and there was 2 that they called runners. They would carry the 25-pound shells from the caisson to the gun.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't want the caisson full of ammunition beside the gun in case it got hit. It was going to take out a lot of things.
Yeah.
So the Germans knew that. So when you pulled your gun tractor and the caisson away, they knew that cannon wasn't going anywhere, and you weren't going to come back with a truck to get it. So they started shelling the Canadian cannons. So they all dove into a slip trench, and a slip trench is, it's not a foxhole. It's a trench just deep enough for you to lie in. So when the bombs hit, the concussion goes over you. And they were lying in the slip trenches when one of the German shells landed on the other side of the gun. And when my dad came to, he was bleeding from his eyes and his nose and his mouth, ears. The concussion blew his eardrums out. He had a big piece of German shrapnel from the shell in his hand. And he said that's because when you go in a slip trench, you undo your chin strap on your helmet. They had British style round helmets. And he said you'd lie face down and you'd hold your helmet onto your head, because if the concussion comes underneath and it rips your helmet off, it can break your neck or do lots of damage. But when he came to, he was the only survivor of his gun crew. And his very best friend was in the trench. And the only thing left of him was a torso and one arm. So the back of the truck had canvas over it to keep the gun crews dry when you're driving, I guess. So he ripped a piece of the canvas off and he wrapped the torso and arm in this canvas. And he started walking back to the lines. And chaplain or padre was coming forward, and my dad grabbed him, and he kept yelling this guy's name, and I believe it was Frank Taylor, but he kept yelling this guy's name, and he scared the devil out of this guy, and because he says, I'm shouting, I can't hear myself, I have no eardrums, and he said, I'm shouting his name because I wanted him to understand and write down who he was, because when he lost the other limbs in his head, he lost his dog tags, and he didn't want him buried in an unmarked grave.
Yeah.
He wanted him to be known and have his name on the grave, and that's why he did that. So I didn't ask questions after that.
Yeah.
So
Jeez.
totally understood why he would not want to remember that. Plus, he lost his brother. You know, Frank was his best friend. They were closest in age. They were only a year apart. But
And he lost his brother.
in Hong Kong.
Right.
Yeah, I can tell that story.
Yeah. What was your uncle's story?
Well, like I say, my dad was a gunner in the Royal Canadian Artillery. His name was Lloyd Walter Ford. I'm Robert Lloyd Ford. And my uncle was Frank Maxwell Ford. He was born, he was the son of Verna and William Ford. He was born in Trossachs, Saskatchewan on the 27th of September, 1918. He joined the Grenadiers. He enlisted, I should say. He enlisted in September the 6th, 1939. And his regimental number was H6113, and he became part of B Company, 12th Platoon of the Winnipeg Grenadiers, and then they became eventually C Force when they went over. In February of 1940, he married Muriel Evelyn McLean. And he was given a week's absence, a week's furlough to enjoy his wedding and his bride. And after a couple days, they recalled him, and they shipped him to Halifax and eventually to Jamaica for their garrison duty. So he had only been with his wife a few days. And then almost 2 years later, he was shipped back home as they were preparing to go over to Hong Kong. He had no idea where he was going. That was a secret. He couldn't tell Muriel where he was going. But anyway, they gave them furloughs on the way so that you could have a few days with your family before you got shipped over. And I think he was given 10 days. It might have been 2 weeks. But anyway, he didn't make the full time. He was with Muriel and he got another call. Get back. Away he went. He went overseas with the Grenadiers on the 22nd of December, 1941. He was killed on a battle on Mount Cameron. So he and Muriel had been together as husband and wife less than 14 days from the time he got married to the time he was killed. So they didn't see lots of each other. Muriel stayed in touch with my grandfather the rest of her life. She did remarry, and it was a blessing. They wanted her to, but she stayed close to my grandfather and my family there the rest of her life as well. So it was a great story there.
How many brothers were there?
4 went to war.
4 went to war.
Yeah, there was when my Uncle Frank was 13 or 14, his mother died, and that left my grandfather with 8 surviving children. I think there was 11 altogether. 10. 8 survived. So he had to raise these children on his own. And 4 of his sons went to war, and Uncle Frank was the only one not to come home. When he was killed, my grandfather received a telegram saying, the first telegram said that he was missing in action and presumed dead. The second one was his name was on a POW list, so that they didn't know where, they didn't know confirmation of that, but they somehow wrote it that his name was showed up on a POW list. And then the third telegram he got was they confirmed that he died 22nd of December, 41.
3 days before the surrender.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And growing up, when I was a little boy, my Uncle Frank's picture was in my dad's bedroom. And, who's he? Is that you? No, that's my uncle, my uncle, his brother. And he told me, he went overseas and didn't come home from the war. And then when I got a little bit older, we're talking, and my dad said that he'd like to get to Hong Kong because he knew that my uncle was commemorated there. So he never did. My dad didn't have good health at the end, and going back to when I was little, and I don't even know how little I was, 10, 11, 12, we used to get the Hamilton Spectator newspaper, and on the weekend there was a magazine that they would put in the paper. It was called the Weekend Magazine. And in it they had a picture of Saiwan Bay, the memorial in Hong Kong for the Canadians that died. And my dad said, that's where his brother is. And so my mom cut that article out, and I still have it. I still have that single page from that magazine. But I told my dad, and here I am, a little boy. I said, Dad, I'm going to get there one day. I'm going to pay our respects. I'm going to find where he is. Your dad, yeah, sure you are.
Yeah.
Good on you. Yeah, I hope you do. And then nothing was really said for, about that subject. And then, of course, my dad passed. And then to get back, though, back to my uncle, when he didn't come home, and this is, to me, it's an important part. So there was 4 boys that signed up from Macaulay. I don't know if you know where that is.
Mm-mm.
It's a little town. It's near Brandon. And they called them the Macaulay boys because there was 4 from the same little area. They all joined up, and they were all Grenadiers. 2 of the 4 came home. So one of the surviving, and I don't know which one, one of the surviving guys went to my grandfather, and he just wanted to tell him that I was with your son when he passed. And he asked my grandfather, do you want to know how he died, or is it better if we just let it be and you know that he died fighting to the end with his friends? And my grandfather opted to hear the story. So the Grenadiers, my B company, they were fighting on Mount Cameron, and Mount Cameron is very, very steep.
Mm-hmm.
It's very steep. So they had the high ground, and the Japanese were coming uphill. And he says we were defending this one particular part of the slope, and the Japanese were just unending. As fast as you'd shoot them, somebody else would be coming. And he said we all ran out of ammunition. And he said the Japanese are throwing grenades, and we're picking them up and throwing them back. And then he says we're picking up rocks, we're picking up sticks, we're throwing anything and everything that we could. And he said it became hand to hand. And he said my uncle was bayoneted in the stomach. And he said eventually we were overrun by the Japanese, and those that survived that weren't outright dead already were put on the side of the road. And my uncle was on a stretcher, and when the last vehicle came to take the wounded down, I guess it was to Stanley, I'm not sure where, but to one of the hospitals anyway, there was an officer lying beside my uncle. And I don't know if it was because they saw he was belly wounded and the chances of you surviving that are not good. For whatever reason, though, they took the officer, but they left my uncle. And the young guy that came back and survived the POW camp told my grandfather it's probably for the best, because he heard that the soldiers that were taken to the hospital were slaughtered by the Japanese in their beds.
Mm.
And he died with his friends, your son. So I think that brought my grandfather a little bit of peace, that his son didn't suffer what they suffered in the prisoner of war camps. He didn't go through those 4 years. He died with his friends. So what more could a soldier want? So he was commemorated. His body was left where he died. The Canadian survivors were captured, were taken away. And he told my grandfather that my Uncle Frank would have either been thrown over the cliff, and I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's Repulse Bay on the other side of Mount Cameron where they were. They were thrown over the cliff into the bay, or they were stacked and burned, because that's the way the Japanese handled Canadian dead. They didn't bury him. So he believes he was thrown over the cliff, but there's no way of us knowing. And like I said, in 2014, my wife and I were able to go to Hong Kong. We were able to hire Martin Hayes. He's a former British SAS soldier who, when he retired from the service, Special Air Service, he became a policeman in Hong Kong, married a girl, local girl, learned the language, loved history, became a historian, so we hired him. And he took us all through Hong Kong. We spent a full day with him. I mean, like 8 a.m. till I don't even know what time it was when we got back. Probably midnight. So he walked us down Salisbury Street in Kowloon, where the Royal Rifles and the Winnipeg Grenadiers marched. He took us by I call it the two lions. There's 2 big stone lions in front of the Peninsula Hotel in Kowloon. Mm-hmm. And that's where General Maltby took the salute from the Canadians. He took us to the Star Ferry, and the Star Ferry is what took the Grenadiers and the Rifles from Kowloon to Hong Kong. Mm. So we took the Star Ferry.
Wow.
He was able to take us where Lawson was killed. We did I believe it's called the 10 Stations of the Cross, which is the I forget the name of the line now.
Gin Drinker's line?
No, Gin Drinker's line is
on the mainland.
Yeah, it's closer to across from Kowloon. Wong Ni Chong Gap.
Okay, yeah.
So the Canadian government, we were lucky. When we were there in 2014, it was passable. So it used to be like a walking trail, and they had these signs and plaques and, like I say, the 10 stations, right? And it takes you up, Jardines Peak, I think it's called, where Osborne was killed. Mm-hmm. So we did that. It's 4 or 5 hour hike. It was a good go. But the Canadian government dropped funding. I guess there wasn't enough people coming to maintain the trail. And now the jungles have taken over the trail. Oh. So I don't know if it's even possible now. But we were able to do that. Like I said, where Lawson came out of the bunker and was shot and killed, we saw that because that's very close to where my Uncle Frank died. So anyway, he took us to Mount Cameron. He took us to where the fighting occurred. He says, I can't tell you exactly where your uncle died, but it'd be very close to the spot because here's that steep slope and here's where the Grenadiers were making their last stand. And
how did you feel when you were?
Yeah, it's emotional. I felt his presence, and I said to our guide, I feel Uncle Frank, and I hope he feels me. And then we went back down to Saiwan Bay. We saw his name. It's on column 26 on the Saiwan Bay. His name's engraved, again, because he has no known grave. And the fairy tale story, and I've said this in a couple of different interviews, the fairy tale story it was very gloomy and overcast at that end of the day. And I was sitting on the little bench in front of where his name is, and Martin and my wife were standing behind me, and it was like a little hole opened up in the clouds, and a beam of light came through it. My dad would always say that's the clouds drawing water, the farmer in him, right? Because you can see kind of the rays coming down through the clouds. And I said that's their acknowledgement that I made it. So 45 years after I told my dad I was going to do that as a young little kid, I got there and I did it. So I felt good.
Wow. What do I even say after that story? That is great. That's wild.
Thank you.
That's heavy.
Thank you both.
Hey, anytime. And I think a question that I've had for a lot of people here so far is what do you want the next generation to remember about the Hong Kong?
That's a great question.
Defense of Hong Kong.
That's a great question. You were at the cenotaph, right? Mm-hmm. Our last speaker, and I forget his name. It was the best speech I think I've ever heard.
Métis guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think his name is Jimmy. Yeah.
Yeah. And he ended by saying that the most important thing is to teach the young. As a young Métis, you learn your traditions. I hate to say it, but I'm ignorant of all your traditions. But it's oral for a lot of it, right? It's not written, but it's passed down. And you have elders and you have, the keepers of your lore that share it with the young people. We don't have that. You guys are so far ahead of us when it comes to that. We don't have your traditions, which it's only good. And what he said is that we have to become teachers so that the young don't forget. So it's different for me because my children have had to listen to me my whole life, telling them about their grandfather and their great uncle. Because the pictures that were in my dad's room of my uncle and his medals, they're all framed. They're on display. We talk about it. And we just can't limit it to our own family. You have to expand it. And he had it right on. It's got to be taught in the schools. We don't teach that. And like there's so much that we don't teach. There's so much history that we don't teach in our Canadian schools. Like there should be some world history, of course, so you have context. But we don't celebrate you guys, all Indigenous people, and their culture. So much to be learned from that. So much. Same with our veterans. First World War, Boer War. I had a grandfather on my mom's side that fought in the Boer War and the First World War. And, so like there's military all throughout our family. And so, like I say, our children were raised with it. I'm sure they'll carry that on to their children. But that's not enough. That's why we join this. And like Lori, when she calls us to help, even if it's to meet at some little cemetery somewhere in Southern Ontario where we put a marker that he was a Hong Kong vet on that guy's grave, we're there. Because you're supporting that guy's family and again, you're teaching, you're helping. Somebody might come by that cemetery and see that little plaque. What's that plaque? The little Hong Kong symbol. And if it generates questions and questions can be answered and there's teaching moment. So it's all good.
Mm-hmm. I just have a couple last questions here for you. And I guess the first one is going back, why did your dad and uncles join the war in the first place?
Oh, good question.
If you had to guess, I've asked this question to a lot of people and they're all like, I think it's this one. You know what I mean?
I really don't know.
Yeah.
Because I never, ever met my uncle. My father tried to join up with him. And my dad was very tiny, 5'6" or 5'7". And I think he was like 115 pounds. And it was so early in the war, September 6th, that I think they asked him to go to Shiloh, Manitoba, where he would have a better shot at being in a tank crew because they wanted little people for being inside the tank. So he never enlisted with the 4 other Macaulay boys, including his brother. He enlisted maybe a year later, and then he was gone off right away. He was Operation Husky was the first Canadian participation in the war, which was the invasion of Sicily. Eventually crossing over into Italy, he fought all through the Hitler line, the Gothic line,
horrible war too.
Horrible war. Casino, where his friend was killed. I have one happy story he did relate to me. when he was in Holland after the war, when you were in battle, before you went into battle, you had to take all the insignia off your uniforms. And it would be there was a patch, sort of a burgundy patch with a blue line through it and then a zigzag. So that meant you were artillery. So you had to take that off because they didn't want, if you were captured, the Germans to know you were artillery.
Yeah.
They didn't want to know rank. So you had to take your stripes off if you were a sergeant or something like that. Everything except Canada had to come off your uniform. So he says, I'm walking down the street, having a smoke, and all he's got is Canada on his shoulders. And this door opens, and he says, it's not like here in Canada. We all got big green lawns, and houses are spaced. He said, this is like a row house. You open the door, you come down 2 little steps, you're on either the cobblestone road or a little tiny sidewalk. So he said, this door opens and a young teenage girl comes out and she sees my uniform and she comes down and she grabs me by the arm and she starts dragging me into this house. And the next thing I know is there's the grandma standing in the doorway. Well, she comes down and grabs him, drags him into the house. And he can't speak Dutch. They can't speak English. And they're all gibbering and, sit down. My dad sits down, like, what are you going to do? Fight an old lady and the little girl? So he sits down. He thought, oh, okay, they just want, they're happy I'm here. I brought food. And maybe I'll get a cup of tea. And he said, next thing I know, out comes the soup bowls and the spoons. And he's going, these people are starving. They can't feed me. Anyway, he said it was the best meal he ever had in his life. And it was 1 boiled turnip. They boiled a single turnip in a pot. And they made it, like they pour the broth in and then break up the turnip into this water that the turnip was cooked in. And he says that was the most expensive meal they could provide. And they wanted to share it with me. And he didn't want to because he knew how desperate they were for food.
Yeah.
Hence, that's why he was trucking this food in. And so he says, I tried to tell him no. And anyway, they insisted. So he drank the soup. And he said, when I walked out, I didn't have any money, cigarettes, or chocolate. He said, I left everything I had with them because if they don't smoke, they'll sell it. If they don't eat the chocolate, they'll sell it. But they could use all that and help. So he felt really close to the Dutch. He really did. He always wanted to get back to Holland. We actually, my dad and I were talking about getting on one of those Legion tours to go back to Holland on the anniversary. Mm-hmm. But my dad, he didn't make it. He died of a heart attack. We didn't get there. But he had nothing but fond memories of the Dutch and things like that, right? So
wow.
He remembers the day he had one of the side mirrors on his truck was broken. So he had the shard of mirror and he had it propped up on the gun tractor somehow, and he was shaving. His helmet was a shaving bowl. And his sergeant came up and he said, Lloyd, the war's over. So he thinks it was May 5th, because that's when they declared the war was over for Europe. Well, I guess the signing was the 7th, but the end of the fighting was the 5th. So he thinks it was the 5th. And he said, Lloyd, the war's over. And I forget how many years later that would be. So anyway, his first grandson, my son, Jonathan, was born on May the 5th, 1984. May the 5th, 1984. And he was told on May the 5th, 1945, that the war was over. So
wow.
That was, the quirk of time, right? But
important day.
important day.
Yeah.
You had 2 important days.
Wow. I think that there are so many stories that we can learn from that we just don't, like some people in our generation just don't bother to ask.
Yeah.
Right? And like my grandfather was a Hong Kong vet, you know, and he came home and Métis guy. We have stories about him. He just could not stop drinking after he got back, you know.
Oh, I understand that.
After
for sure.
surviving.
Yeah.
But every single little piece of him is also in me. So I miss him in a way. you know?
Yeah.
So, and it's just such a privilege to get to come to an event like this and hear stories like your uncle and your dad and everybody that was downstairs, you know, like, because I get to learn a little bit more about him, you know.
My dad had a couple. One of his best friends after the war was a native fellow, Ken McDonald. It's not very native sounding, but and they played for the Moose Lodge Redcaps baseball, and Redcap was named after the beer, Redcap beer.
Okay.
And I've got a championship picture from like I don't know what it is, 55, 56. They were having a good time. I think the beer league was invented by these guys. But anyways, they were best friends, this guy. And my dad said during the war, because he signed up in Winnipeg, there was so many natives, like in his artillery outfit. They were the 29th Battalion, 11th Field 29th Battalion. And he, like I didn't know this until he told me one day. He says, when you're a gun crew, you don't have an infield rifle, you aren't armed, you know, you're working the gun. But he said we were surrounded by, and he said they were the native guys that joined up because nobody could outshoot them.
Mm-hmm.
They were snipers by birth. Like they were just crack shots.
Mm-hmm.
And he said the Germans would sneak their snipers up to pick us off, the guns. And he said these guys were so good. He said, you know, you didn't even know where they were. They were just, and you'd hear, and then, you know, a little while, yeah, we got them.
Yeah.
You know, like they were protecting the gun crews. That was their job. These native fellows, and he said they're your best friends.
Oh yeah.
Because they got your back. You know, you can't be working a gun and watching for these guys. And if you're worried about that, you're not going to do your job.
Yeah.
So these guys kept you safe.
There's lots of stories like that. And
so
when my grandfather got home from the war, he was back on the family farm, and he always had a rifle next to him when he was at the farm.
Isn't that something, eh?
And he saw a bear that was running. He got put into a mode. He grabbed a rifle, and the bear was running. He stood up, stepped down off the porch, and hit the bear in the head running. Yeah. But it was I think it was more of a traumatic response.
A reflex.
Yeah, just to shoot. But all the farm boys, that's what they were good at.
Yeah.
You know, they were good at shooting.
You know, and as silly as it sounds in today's world, you know, like when my dad signed up, all the native guys, nobody saw color or race or religion, right? You're all from the same place. You know, we're all farm boys. We're all from this little area.
Yeah.
And you know, they're friends, and that's all that mattered. So
I think that's what I've taken away so much, because when I originally came here, I actually just only wanted to interview Métis and Native families, right? Because that's what we usually do. But when I started hearing the stories, I was like, oh, that's not fair of me, because when they were in the trench, or when they were in the fight, there was no separation.
They were brothers.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah.
Right? Who's looking after you? Your brother. So
I think the only difference is that when they came back, the treatment was a little bit different.
absolutely.
And so my grandfather,
Absolutely.
my do you know who Tommy Prince is?
Yes, for sure I do.
So my grandfather and Tommy Prince, they gave their medals away
Yes.
when they got back.
Oh, now there's something in common. I don't know how old I was. My dad had a little night drawer dresser beside his bed. I don't even know why I went in it one day, and there was an envelope, a brown envelope from the government of Canada, and it had my dad's name on it. And, you know, the stamps that they used to cancel your stamp with? 1965. And when I opened it, it was my dad's medals and ribbons. They weren't even attached. They were just in this envelope. And I said, Dad, what are you doing? You should be proud of these. No, I don't need them. And I said, they're dated 1965. He says, yeah, when we got back, they told us, you know, tell us where you live kind of thing, and we'll send them to you. And I didn't want them.
Wow.
So he says, I don't know how many times I got a letter. And then he says, one day they must have found where I lived and they mailed them to me. But that's 20 years after the war, before. And he says, I didn't even ask for them. They just showed up.
Just sent them.
So my wife and I and my mom at the time, we had them framed nicely, and I still have them today. My dad did wear them at the end. He joined the Legion, and he would, you know, always Remembrance Day. He ended up years and years later. Well, my son was born. So 40 years after he got home, he probably attended his first Remembrance Day ceremony. And then because we joined the Legion and he got to talk to other vets, he started attending, and then he'd start wearing his medals, and, you know, but 50 years after the fact before he felt comfortable enough to do that.
I always wonder why.
I don't know why.
The story I tell myself about it is that you probably don't feel proud about the things that you did while you're over there, you know?
No, sure.
Probably don't feel like you should get a medal for what you did.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's what I would ask him is that's what I asked my grandfather is, why did you give your medals away?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad ignored him.
Yeah.
For so many years.
I'm glad that towards the end,
he reconciled with himself.
Yeah.
Right? More than anything. Because who else can do it? Nobody can do it for you.
Yeah.
But I know the respect he had for everybody that was with him in his outfit. Like I say, you look after each other. Quite a story.
Sitting
Thank
down,
you,
hanging
Ria,
out.
for your interest.
No worries.
Sorry, I've forgotten your name.
Oh,
Hi, Ryan. Yeah.
nice to meet you.
So make me beautiful.
Hey, you're gorgeous.
That's what everybody says.
Where did you grow up, Barbara?
Well, Dad stayed in the military.
Yeah.
He was a military dentist when he joined.
Yeah.
And he felt it would be a healthier life for him because of his coming home from the war and anything that had affected his health, like most everybody.
Yeah.
So he chose not to go back into private practice. And we had quite an extensive military life of moving around from coast to coast and over to Metz, France.
Wow. He was a dentist when he was in Hong Kong too?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay.
He was one of two.
Okay. And where did you go? So you grew up just bouncing around everywhere?
Yeah, just about every 2 years. In those days, we were moved and I was changed to another school. But the interesting thing is, I've lived in Ottawa 8 years between my father and my ex's military career.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I've got 3 houses to drive by before I go home tomorrow.
To visit, to see what's
Well,
up?
not to visit, but to see what it looks like now.
Yeah.
My old schools, yeah.
Oh, what was your dad like?
Well, he was a very gentle, kind person. Everybody would say he certainly set what you'd want in a dentist working on you. And he grew up in Manitoba.
Okay.
And went to U of T in Toronto, graduated 3 T4s, they used to say, 1934.
Mm-hmm.
Set up practice for 5 years back in his hometown of Souris in Manitoba, and joined in Brandon, and first posting, I guess, was out of Winnipeg, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up back in Winnipeg at Osborne Barracks for my grade 2 and 3.
Okay.
So, but that was the last he ever lived in Manitoba.
Yeah. Did he ever talk about his experience?
Not very much, and that was very common.
Yeah.
And as a daughter, I'm an only child, in fact. He didn't choose, and I guess being a girl, I didn't choose to ask questions, except always November the 11th. The 3 of us would sit and watch the November the 11th service from Ottawa.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing was, until he did the interview, and I think that was about 95, 96 perhaps, was it, that they did them?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't learn some things that he gave as an interview. So that was the opening, I think, for me to start asking a few more questions, and Dad was a little freer in coming with more details. One of which he said in his interview was when he and his pal, the medical doctor Crawford, during the battle, I guess they fled to the Stanley Hospital in the middle of Hong Kong Island.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing they could do was stuff their lab coat pockets with powdered aspirin. And that was the only painkiller they had.
Wow.
For a long time, yeah.
Wow. That's wild to hear.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I mean, he should have been praised for it, but I had just learned it.
Yeah.
And then another thing was reading and getting ready for this lovely weekend experience. And I know a lot of the other kids, as I call myself, was that they'd come to Dad to have their gold fillings removed, because then they could get something to trade. I don't think it was money, but something to trade with the Japanese camp guards to get cigarettes or food or especially anything fresh, which was almost impossible for their diets.
Wow. So people would come get their fillings removed so that they could have some money to trade.
Yeah.
That's great. Have you
had that story yet?
No. Okay. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I think I just learned it researching this last month. I've got a lot of newspapers, both my grandmother and my mother saved. My grandmother was still out in Winnipeg, Souris, Manitoba. Mm-hmm. So all her newspapers are Winnipeg, and it has a lot with the Grenadiers in it, of course.
Yeah.
And then my mom and I lived with my grandma in Windsor, Ontario. So all her papers were Windsor, London, Ottawa, I think. And Dad even had a few Hong Kong newspapers.
Wow.
So I guess they got them when their camps were opened up and the guards fled for the 2 weeks before the surrender or something.
Yeah. If you could ask your dad a question today, what would you ask him?
Oh, I got to think about that. Not enough about personal things about him. Like, I know he was wounded in one attack and it was shrapnel, but it wasn't until he came home, and we were living in Vancouver at the time, and so that was 1950, and he finally went to the military hospital there to have surgery. So I've never really asked him too much about his health, because it was my mom always the buffer taking care of him, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So when he came back to Vancouver, and you guys stayed there for a little while you recovered?
Not really.
Yeah.
My mom volunteered with the Red Cross in Windsor.
Okay.
And she helped, especially the British war brides, reconnect they were married to Canadians, and they would come into Canada for the first time ever. And then some of them might have to go across the border to Detroit to get on American trains to go west. So that was one of my mom's jobs, working in the war. And blood donor clinics, too. She helped us. She wasn't a nurse, but she helped driving and handling bottles, I guess, and supplies and setup. But she learned quite quick. She could learn more than the usual wife, I guess, at that time, and made several trips back here to Ottawa to find out whether Dad was alive or dead.
Oh, wow.
Because there just was no word. And even though Hong Kong fell in December, there was no list of who was alive or in a camp until at least May, I think, was the first clipping I've got that says so-and-so is alive and is on a list.
Wow.
So the wives really went through an awful lot.
Yeah.
And a lot of lies came through the government because they couldn't depend on any specific press. And even if the Japanese put out a press release, it wasn't necessarily true. And I've seen that in the paper clippings too.
Wow.
But one wife, a close friend of ours, was Captain Bush. Now, he doesn't have any relative here today, but he always lived in Ottawa. And his wife was definitely told that he was killed. And it took 8 months to correct that he was still alive.
Wow.
So that was just the information that was so poor.
Yeah. What do you want the next generation to know about Hong Kong?
Well, this is going to sound silly. As a child, I'd hear my parents say, your dad was a prisoner of war. And in my age and moving around, I was almost ashamed to share with new playmates that my dad was a prisoner. I didn't understand, I guess, is what I'm trying to relate. And I didn't realize it. And then the other misconception is when Mom would be so free to talk about the map of Hong Kong, even while I was in, say, high school, I didn't understand the map, that it was an island below the mainland of Hong Kong, which was really the mainland of China eventually, you might say. So that was a confusion in my mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, maybe if I had been a son and shooting in typical male interests, I might have gotten to that question sooner and asked Dad to clarify what they meant, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I don't think I'll say my dad, but I'm going to say it for the group. I don't think we kids probably honored and respected our fathers enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's coming out now, what a hero they defended. Because the vehicles hadn't arrived until about, was it 3 weeks after they arrived on that? They had really very few guns and ammunition to work with at the time of the battle. And they just simply, and they had no war experience. I mean, one of them was at the Royal Rifles, so the Grenadiers had been in Jamaica, and one group had served in Newfoundland, which wasn't Canada then. But they really were not war trained. And yet, look at what they were able to hold off for about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's rather amazing, I think.
And then to live for years after.
And to survive. Well, they were all young men, of course, most of them except for the senior colonel and brigadier. But yeah.
I always think about that. Like, what did you have to be telling yourself to survive for all those years after?
I know. And because they went like week by week, would they be released? Would they be rescued? You know, and yet they had no word. They didn't even know World War II had ended in Europe.
Yeah.
Until the American planes finally came over. And I guess the Americans had quite a hot spot there where MacArthur and those generals were over in Malaysia and Philippines and so on and so forth. And they dropped pamphlets. Have other people said that? And that's the only way they got news to read in their prison camp yards.
They dropped pamphlets for airplane.
American airplanes. Or maybe there were some Brits too.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And that's how they found out that something was up and maybe they'd be rescued.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll give it a
So
little.
how did you get connected?
To this?
Yeah.
So
One of our members, or
my grandfather is a veteran,
yeah,
and so
of the Second World War. No.
of Hong Kong.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I've always wanted to interview to learn more about it because it's kind of hard. It's honestly kind of a hard war to learn about.
Well, we were the last anybody ever gave notice to.
Exactly.
Like as my mother would always say, we were the first to send troops over into battle, to see battle, and we were the last to bring our men home.
Yeah.
Europe was way back home, and Europe went over early to Britain, but they didn't go to war at first.
Yeah, exactly.
And we never had this interest before. Maybe it's partly because our association has grown and asked for recognition.
Yeah.
It's too bad we hadn't. Like I just joined. Dad knew about it forming because the old vets couldn't handle their own affairs and keeping this club, if you want to call it, going.
Yeah.
So that's how we were approached to start it as kids. And I think my dad died in 2000 before it really got going.
Yeah.
And then they started to, to find people to represent areas. And that's how it grew and opened and became a little more powerful.
Yeah. A little bit more say.
Yeah.
A little more command.
Yeah. What we needed to be our responsibility, not only just to continue helping the vets that were still alive, making their voice. Oh, and by this time there was still no apology from Japan, and there wasn't enough money that ever got to the right soldiers that were very young and let's say very poor and in very poor health. So, it's too bad it hadn't started earlier, maybe.
Yeah.
But at least we have opened up. I mean, I never expected to be at the War Memorial today.
Yeah.
I never thought we would get the recognition or the attention or the caring.
It was a beautiful ceremony to see
really
happen.
was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was cool. Because,
like it was almost as good as a full November the 11th for all of Canada.
For sure, 100%. I'd say it was like, at least going to the ones in Vancouver, it was just the same. If anything, that was maybe even busier.
Yeah. Now, what group was your relative with? Grenadiers?
He's a Grenadier, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. There was one close friend. In fact, when we lived in Vancouver, Dad was best man for one of the other men.
Oh, really?
McCarthy.
Okay.
Now, I don't know whether he had any kids, but Dad, as I say, served as best man for him, and his wife was, oh dear, it was on my name, I can't think. But we don't know whether they had any children, and we don't know whether they would be even recognized and belong to this association. So that's the sad part.
Yeah.
We're not all full of information yet.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is a little bit sad. When my grandfather came back to Vancouver after surviving, he actually had a daughter with a woman in Vancouver, and then we grew up never knowing about her. So I had an aunt in Vancouver that lived in New Westminster.
Yeah.
And she just found us 2 years ago.
Oh, how marvelous.
I know. So, and she's...
Like, that's it. These connections are so powerful.
I know. So, yeah, and it's been amazing. So that's kind of how that's how I got curious about what he went through.
What it meant, yeah.
And then I just commented one day. I was like, if you ever have anybody that wants to be interviewed, just let us know. And then boom, flew us out here, and here we are.
Good.
I know.
So are we paying you or
no
finished product or anything?
No.
Are you producing like what our dad's got, the VHS tape that I still haven't transferred to a CD disc?
We're not producing a VHS tape. No, we're not. But no, it'll be a full video, and we're giving all the footage back to the organization.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So because I think the general fear is that, as the kids grow up, and are getting a little bit older,
Mm-hmm.
that what's going to continue this forward. And
Yeah, we don't want to lose this history.
in our generation,
Yeah, you're
you just
like
take your
my
phone
kids.
out. You just take your phone out and watch stuff.
And you want it fast and
exactly.
And whatever is the current machine.
Exactly. And I think that's our role here.
Oh, good.
Make sure that we have saved some stories in the current machine.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I gathered. Those first interviews were for prosperity.
Yeah.
Now, did you have anything to do with this movie they're going to show about departure and?
No.
Okay,
No,
so that maybe goes back to those first interviews?
Yeah,
What
definitely.
footage they had?
Definitely, yeah. I wish I got to interview a vet. That would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Nobody ever mentioned the name of the person that died 2 years, who was 2 years ago. That was the last vet.
Yeah.
I suppose I can find out
Yeah.
which part of the country he lived in, but yeah, it's remarkable because those young boys, they even lied about their ages. Have you heard that one?
Yeah.
Just to join, to be.
My grandfather was one.
Was he?
Yeah. He lied. I think he was
16,
17 when he joined.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the courage. And yet, as Dad said, well, it was just the thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, as Native people, like, he had nothing going on the farm. Yeah.
Right. The prospects were, yeah.
So he was just like, well, we'll go for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Why not?
Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Well, I've enjoyed the influence of your Indigenous peoples, if I may say that without being insulting.
No.
I've really enjoyed seeing that that's part of us.
100%. Big Métis presence in the Grenadiers, especially. Yeah. Well, thank you, Barbara.
Well, thank you again very much. Yeah.
We'll talk to you a bit.
I don't know if Mom told you this, but Dad also tried to get into the Korean War.
Yeah, he told me that.
Yeah, and
they denied him.
They denied him. They wouldn't let him go into the Korean War because of his trauma. Right? He felt more at more at ease or more comfortable in being in that sort of
in that war
conflict environment than being a civilian at home. So
he's still a kid, but
he was your age, Riel, when he got home.
And he looked like he was 40.
Grandpa, if they happen to have YouTube in the spirit world and you're watching this, I want you to know that your kids love and miss you. But getting them to sit still and have a serious conversation is almost impossible. Dad, where are we today?
We're at the War Museum in Ottawa.
What are we doing?
We're looking for Anne. Anne! Yeah, we thought we'd find Auntie Annie here. There was a coloring table, so. Hey, Anne! Anne! Where'd you go after here?
I went inside the gift shop.
Oh, you went to the gift
No,
I had a gush of wind.
A pig suit? It sounds like I want one for my brother.
Is it one way or what?
Have a good look at the map.
We can't read.
Can't read?
Ready to go,
again,
Anne?
the government's screwing people.
You gotta delete that one, eh? We want funding.
Get up now.
I'm gonna get the name of that stinking book if it kills me. I hope that one day that you're sitting close to me that I can let one out and you're gonna be forced to breathe it in.
All right, Anne, you can fart now.
Just so you know, we saw nothing of that museum. So how do you like the event so far, Auntie?
I don't even have words for the event. It's been such a fulfilling experience being here the whole weekend.
Really?
Yes, it's just like my whole life has been about finding information about my dad and anything about what he did in the war.
Yeah.
His part in the war.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe in my earlier years, I got caught up with this ideal of what he would have been doing and I didn't know the information I knew today, but so I had him pictured doing all these like, I don't know, like jumping off cliffs and all this other stuff. And I didn't never imagine him being a POW and captured and being nearly starved to death and tortured. And when my mom finally told me about some of the experiences, and I was learning and actually listening to her, it piqued my interest, and I wanted to know more.
Yeah.
I wanted to know his pain, like my compassion in me. I had to know about his pain.
What did Grandma tell you about him?
I guess just some of the incidents that happened to her, like he almost ended up punching her in her sleep.
Yeah.
Because he was having a nightmare, and so they learned they didn't sleep separate, but they put like a divider in between them so that it would sort of keep them separate, because he didn't want to sleep separate from her.
Yeah.
So they figured out a way to make that work. But
what do you remember about Grandpa?
I remember him being a very kind and generous man. I understand that my brother Ken has a total different experience, but the last 2 years of my dad's life, I was with him constantly, and I got to know, I guess maybe him reconciling with himself, right? I just saw a really soft, kind, generous man. He never yelled at me. I know that we joked about his army belt and stuff, but you know what? He never yelled at me. He never spanked me. He didn't do, like, he treated me like a little princess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you mean by the army belt? Joked about the army belt.
Well, he had an army belt, and he kept that from his days, and I don't remember him ever using it, but once he died, my mom used it on us when we were like really, really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember getting the belt a couple times, but justly so, I probably did warrant it, but it still hurt all the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, I you know what? I don't know whatever happened to that belt. I wish I think Mary said she has it. My sister Mary. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Auntie Mary has it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. What's been the most surprising thing that you've learned while you've been here?
About being at the event here?
Yeah, just Hong Kong in general.
That there's so many people here that have the interest in the person of the veteran, whether he lost his life there or came home, that they want to know everything about, I guess, their experience of what they went through, so maybe they can understand how they were when they got home.
Yeah. Have you found this event pretty healing?
I've forgiven my dad like a long time ago. I didn't need to come here to forgive him. I forgave him.
Yeah.
Like years ago. I came here to understand him better. Just the fact that why he felt the need that why they felt they need to go and forget, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he would disappear, like, for weekends and stuff like that. I guess even before I was born and your dad was born, he would disappear. Like, I guess it was more casual between him and my mom, and they would just do their own thing and come together and love each other. Mm. Yeah. Until I think after Ken was scooped in the 60 scoop, my grandmother, his mom, because of our sister Donna being taken out of the family with the adoption, my grandmother was like, they're not taking the only Drury in our family that can carry on the name. And she goes, you got to get him out of there. And I don't think he even knew that Ken was scooped up, because he was, I'm not sure how he didn't know about all this, but once he found out he was scooped, he went to the CFS and he made sure that they all knew that he wanted his son back, and like today.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe he was in the paper about, because he was like not gonna leave until they brought him his son, and I think they guaranteed him that he would be home, like that he would get to see him within. So I think he did get to see him within a couple weeks, but it took him almost a year to get him out of there.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know Dad was scooped for a whole
Yeah.
year. Wow. It was in the paper.
My dad was in the paper with about causing a ruckus at the CFS center. Yeah.
Well, I never heard that story.
That's what Grandma said to me. My mom said to me. Yeah, he was like, he just basically said, "Give me my fucking son back."
Wow.
He said, "I didn't fight for this country for you guys to fucking take my son."
Wow.
Yeah.
And Dad got scooped because Grandma tried to cash his war pension check.
No, that was a different. No, that was Bill Joint. That was a total different guy, different incident. This was even before we were born.
Oh wow.
But the thing with my dad was where was I going with that? Sorry. Now I got caught.
Dad getting scooped. How did he get scooped? Like, do you know why?
Oh yeah. My brother Robert. Now we were the youngest 3 of 12 children.
Yeah.
So my mom would put the older children into the movie theater, usually for a double while, and then her brothers and sisters and stuff would get together at the house and play cards and have a kitchen party. This is what our family did.
Mm-hmm.
The kids, we were like, the younger kids would be at home, but the older kids that could sit in a movie theater would be gone. So Ken was at home. I think Brenda was home because Brenda was after Ken. So I think Robert and the rest after that was at the movie theater. So because Sandy actually feels really guilty over this because she was put in the shows and told to look after the kids.
Yeah.
And I guess Robert got out of this movie theater and some lady called CFS saying there was a young kid. So they picked up the children, went to the house and scooped up, because they seen the younger children, they took the younger children too.
Really?
Yeah, just like that. Just like that.
Wow.
And because they saw my mom and her siblings playing poker, and they were playing, like, to them they were probably having a party, but this was just our family way of celebrating and being together. It wasn't we're getting rip-roaring drunk or anything. Like, they were just, this is what we did Saturday afternoons.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And we still do play games like that, but that's crazy. I've never heard that story before.
Yeah, and then so that's what I'm not sure where my dad was in when all this happened, but I know that he found out after the fact, after Ken got scooped. So he may have been in Vancouver for all we know. So because he was still trying to have access to his own daughter that he had out in BC, which we didn't know of at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. If you could tell Grandpa something today, what would you tell him? Or would you ask him?
Why did he choose to leave? Why didn't he choose to fight to stay? I understand why, but I guess the selfish part of me would have even liked to have a day more, a month more, anything more with him. I guess I wouldn't want him to reminisce about his time in the war, because I would ask him about his childhood. Because I'm sure it sounded like he had an happy childhood. So yeah, they were poor, but it sounded like they were happy.
Yeah, poor but on the farm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, why did he choose to leave to go to the war?
Why did he choose to leave to go to the war? Well, my grandfather tried to join because our farm was in trouble. Number one, with taxes and stuff. So, and there was like 30s, there was no jobs, no money, no nothing around. So my grandfather was denied to enter World War II. And then my Uncle John tried, which was my dad's older brother. He got denied because of medical issue. And then, well, my dad was the next son, so he was the candidate that got through.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that either.
Mm-hmm.
And he was only 17 when he joined the military or something.
Yeah, actually he was 16.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he was 17 by the time they sent him to Jamaica. He turned 17, and then he trained there for a while. And then by when he just turned 18, or I don't even think he was 18 when he was shipped over.
Wow. That is wild.
Mm-hmm.
And they were captured in 1941 and didn't get back till 45, right?
Right. He always said that my birthday gave him something positive to think about, because they were saying, I'm learning actually here, and with all my research, that December 19th was one of the deadliest days of that battle.
Yeah.
December 19th and 20th. December 19th is actually the day that John Osborne covered the bomb with his body and saved numerous grenadiers. So I always wonder, did John Osborne save my dad? And is this what my dad's thinking about when he says, my birthday gave him something positive to think about?
Because you were born December 19th.
Yeah, I wasn't supposed to be born to February.
Oh, wow. Dang. What do you hope the next generation remembers about this war?
I'm hoping that our young youth, like yourself, my son, my daughter, all the youth learn more about the tragedies of this war and what it did to these men and the women. Because I think that's why there's so much war today, is because all the veterans have left this side of the world. And people have forgotten what war does.
Mm-hmm.
And until they go through it, the only thing is this next war is not going to be anything like World War II. So
yeah. Is there anything else you want to say, Auntie?
That I hope that we carry on with these reunions, because I think it's important that our families stay connected, and I look forward, because I will make sure that I attend them, and I think I also has motivated me to get my documentary done. I am doing a documentary on the men's lives before they joined up. So I want to do what their lives were like when they were normal and happy and living their lives up until they joined up, and then the train ride west is what I want to stop at. We all know what happened in the battle, so
yeah,
and what happened after. So I want to focus on the positive and get people to know that what these men were like before the war.
Yeah.
Well,
thanks so much, Auntie, and we'll get that documentary ready for you.
Yeah, because I'm hiring you.
How did you find out about this event? Like, how did you connect?
So, my mom's sister, Mom, can you? Okay.
You got it.
Yeah. You gotta be here close by. So, my mom's sister notified us. I had been on Facebook and I'd been on social media, and I noticed that there were anniversaries and things coming up. And also, my mom's sister notified us and sent us a text message and said, "Oh, did you know that there's a celebration coming up?" And my sister happens to live here, my little sister. And so Mom has never been on a plane for 30 years. She's only taken a couple of plane trips in her life. And And we thought, well, why don't we come, And I mean, it all worked out that we were able to get support from the Métis Veterans Association, and here we are.
Boom.
Yeah.
So when you were growing up, did you know that your grandfather was a Hong Kong?
Yes, but we didn't know. Yeah, we knew, but we didn't have a lot of details. It was something that wasn't really talked about. Mom knew about it. She would, mention a few details, but not much. And then about 20 years ago, I'm guessing, maybe she always had it, but I read through these documents that Mom had given me for the first time.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. I was floored by what he went through because it wasn't talked about. And I'd never met him. And so to me, it was like it was interesting and it was heartbreaking at the same time to like sort of connect with him on a different level and try and put myself in, what kind of shoes did Grandma go through raising a whole family as a single mother after he passed, because he died so young at 48, when she had 6 kids to raise on her own with no assistance, nothing. So it was difficult.
Yeah, what did you learn about what he went through?
What did I learn about what he went through?
Yeah.
I had no idea that he went to war in the first, where they went. I didn't know that he was there for 4 years. I didn't know that he had witnessed the atrocities that he had seen, that he talks about in his statement that he gives.
He gives a statement. That's what this is.
Yes, yeah. So we have a photocopy of a statement that he gave.
Can I see it?
Yes.
Let me take a look. And this is him.
Yes.
Malboeuf. That's him.
So.
Oh, let me look at you for a second. Let's see.
Oh, my mom looks like him.
Let me see. I think so. Yeah, I think so. Oh, you got other pictures too.
So was this taken? I don't know if this was taken before he left or after he came back. But yeah, he looks like he was typically a person who liked a good joke from the looks of it. So to see the look on his face there, he looks pretty beat down.
Yeah.
Pretty serious. Yeah. So that's, he looks pretty serious and beaten down by life at that point. But he must have rebounded, at least for a little while, because he came back and he met my mom or my grandmother and they got married. So I do have some lovely photos of their wedding. And then I think that's with his brother, who also went to war with him. So
that's him and his brother?
Yeah.
And these, I don't know. My grandfather also went to Hong Kong, right? But all these boys are smoking handsome from back in the day.
He had a nice smile, that's for sure. I wish I'd met him so much.
And so this is your grandmother?
Yes.
In this photo?
Yes. And here's one more. Should I give him that one? Yeah, so he went on to have 6 kids with her, and my mom is the oldest daughter in the back there. So
you kind of look the same.
Yeah, she does. Thank you.
Here, Jimmer. Wow, that's amazing. Can I read the statement out loud?
Please, if you'd like to, you can. The only thing I should let you know, it's a photocopy of, looks like a photocopy of a photocopy. So there might be some repetition in there.
That's okay.
And if you see that, then you just skip ahead.
That's what editing is for.
That's right.
That's right. Gotta see this. So, I was on the strength of the Winnipeg Grenadiers at Hong Kong. I was attached to A Company and was taken prisoner about the 18th or 19th of December 1941 when the company position was overrun. I was wounded by a grenade about an hour before being taken prisoner. Oh, wow. Some shrapnel, I guess, or something like that.
Yeah. And my mom says that he still had, it was always there. It never got removed. It was in his neck, I believe.
Really?
Yeah.
I arrived at Sham Shui Po Kinna about the 27th or 28th of December 1941. 3 weeks later, I was transferred to North Point Camp and remained there until the fall of 1942. When I returned to Shan Shui Po in January 1943, I was transferred to Yokohama Camp 3D, where remained until March 1945. In March 1945, I was moved to Ohashi Island and stayed there until we were liberated. The first night after being taken prisoner, we were crowded into a hut which was hit by mortar bombs during the night. The two Mitchell brothers in the Winnipeg Grenadiers were wounded by these bombs, and Lieutenant Hoklaw, I'm not sure what that says, was also badly wounded the same night. Next morning, our wrists were tied by telephone wire, and we were marched down to the North Point camp. We had to carry Lieutenant, I wish I could see what that typer, McKillop?
I don't know. Does it look like McKillop?
Yes,
okay.
it does. McKillop. On the way down, we passed a Japanese headquarters, and some Japanese soldiers there beat us with bamboo canes.
Yeah.
On the way down to North Point camp, we passed Indian Army prisoners who were carrying, so that must have been like the Rajputs or something like that, who were carrying boxes of ammunition up towards Japanese positions. The guards were beating them with canes and sticks. While on the way down to North Point camp, after being taken prisoner, I witnessed the execution of a wounded Canadian soldier whose name I don't know. He was taken to the side of the road by two Japanese soldiers, and I saw those two Japanese soldiers bayonet this man. Sergeant Pugsley, Winnipeg Grenadiers, might have witnessed this execution. After leaving North Point camp on the way to Shamshui Po, we stayed over at Argyle Street Prison. While we were there, we were forced to unload ammunition from barges while our position was being shelled. We did not receive any food for the first 2 days after capture and no medical attention. At North Point camp, about February or March 1942. See, that's wild how like the times blur together.
Yeah.
We were forced to sign a paper by which we agreed not to attempt to escape. That's hilarious.
Right? Under duress.
Yeah.
Extreme duress.
Yeah. We were told by Japanese officials that if we did not sign this agreement, we would be punished. Shortly afterwards, we were put into groups of 5 and told that if any one of our group escaped, other members of the group would be held responsible. Wow. About November 1942 at Shamshui Po camp, I saw Captain Norris, Winnipeg Grenadiers, beaten by a Japanese interpreter named the Kamloops Kid. No way!
Right, that's the one I was telling you about, yeah.
Oh, wow. I was only 50 yards away and saw Kamloops strike Captain Norris with his fists, knock him down several times, and kick him when he was down. He was badly bruised and cut up. Annexed hereto and marked as Exhibit A to this, my affidavit is a photo. I identify the man on the right facing the photo and marked with the letter I as a Japanese interpreter nicknamed the Kamloops Kid who administered this beating. Was this like a testimony that he's reading out?
Yeah.
In January 1943, I sailed on the Tatuta Maru to Yokohama.
Yep.
This boat was very crowded. We were jammed into the holds of the ship, and there wasn't sufficient room to lie down. At Yokohama, I worked at the Nippon Kokane, I don't know how to say that, shipyards, bending pipes. During the winter of 1943 at Yokohama camp, I witnessed the beating of Pete Braskowitz by 3 of the Japanese camp staff. Man, what tortures are what?
Right?
I might have witnessed this beating. Braskowitz was taken to the hospital as he's severely beaten and kicked. Dang. I was caught smoking by one of the Japanese civilian guards. That's wild. Wow. See, it's just so crazy to hear them go through this type of stuff, you know?
Yeah. And when they were talking about the deliberate sabotage that the 2 soldiers engaged in that caused almost $1 million damage and decimated 60% of their the supplies that they have been working on. Yeah. My mom was just saying that no wonder they were grilling him on whether he was smoking. So smoking would have been, I guess they all smoked, but they wanted to know, they were trying desperately to find out who was behind this sabotage. And I guess they never did find out. And there's no way they weren't going to identify who it was, even if they did know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
If you could meet him today and ask him a question, what would you ask him?
Oh, what would I ask my grandpa? Oh, boy. I guess I'd ask him what's important to you. You know, what do you value the most from your experience? And what would you have liked to have seen happen for your family and for your country?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
What did he pass away from, do you know?
Complications from cancer, I believe. Because he had a lot of different health problems and probably did have some of those undiagnosed health conditions that they came back from.
Yeah.
He didn't talk a lot about his experiences, but he spent a lot of time at the Legion, with other friends and people.
In Winnipeg?
In Indian Head. I believe it was Indian Head.
Okay, gotcha.
Because my mom grew up in Saskatchewan. So he got a small tract of land he was given. And so he had that. But then he got sick. And after he got sick, he passed away. And my grandmother couldn't pay the taxes on the land. So she had to sell it. And she was raising 6 children on her own with no education and no job. And so she struggled. And they struggled very, very much. But she was a very proud Métis woman, and she was determined, to do a good job and raise them up. And so she had a lot of pride in her home and in her garden. And so she sold the house, and they moved closer. They moved to Regina to be closer and more convenient to conveniences, because she didn't drive, she didn't have an education. So they made their way west, and they eventually ended up in Regina. They sold the house and the land. And my mom by then had moved out. My mom married at 17, and she was the oldest of the 6 children. So she had to raise her siblings. And so she was kind of like a substitute parent helping out my grandmother, because my grandmother had, some grief and problems, with that. And so my mom was put under a lot of pressure to raise her siblings. And she ended up marrying young at 17 and moved to Manitoba. And then her brother followed, moved in with my mom. And so she continued to raise her brother. And then another sibling moved out, and then they didn't need as big of a space. And so it just made sense for my grandma to move to Regina. And so that's why she had to sell the house to buy a new one in Regina.
Wow.
Yeah.
How's the event been for you so far?
This has been unbelievable. It's been just a mix of emotions, especially today, seeing my mom, watching her witness this has been emotional.
Yeah.
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 We're very grateful to have been here today. It's meant a lot for us to reconnect to him, because we never got to know him. And I feel like my mom and her siblings were robbed of that opportunity to get to know who he was as a person, who he was before this happened, and who he was after. I'm sure are 2 very different things. You can see glimpses in who he was with his sense of humor, but I think a lot of the time he was trying to conceal, what was going on, and he probably compartmentalized his experience a lot. So seeing my mom get to have some closure and to kind of, represent the family and come and honor his memory is priceless. Mm-hmm. So I'm really grateful, and I know my mom and my sister and my niece, who came as well, are very grateful to the Métis Association, the Métis Veterans Association, for helping us to come to this, and also to my aunt Sharon, who passed this on, because if it hadn't been for her, we wouldn't have known about it to the extent that we were able to be here. And Pamela Poitras Heinrichs.
Yeah.
Amazing woman.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Prayers for you and the family, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good grandmothers, good grandfathers, the 4 sacred directions, creator of all good things. This is the grandson of Private Harry Drury with the Winnipeg Grenadiers. I give thanks for this new day I give thanks for all that you've provided me. I ask in a good and humble way to take care of the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of the Hong Kong veterans. I pray that they receive the healing they want and the healing they need. I pray that our ancestors are in happy hunting grounds with each other, side by side, like we've gathered today. I hope they're happy we're together. I pray that their stories live on within us. I hope that the next generations remember their sacrifices and their smiles, so that we never have to endure something similar again. All my relations, Riel.
They were young as we are young. They served, giving freely of themselves. To them we pledge, amid the winds of time, to carry their torch and never forget. We will remember them.